Welcome to SLEERICKETS, a podcast about poetry and other intractable problems. My name is Alice. I am about to talk to Matthew, and I wanted to try something different given that recording intros is weirdly hard sometimes. I'm going to try to record a little intro to this conversation before we actually start. I think I have 3 minutes to do this. So today, we're going to get deep into some Australian literary shenanigans that have just unfolded over here. I think it's interesting enough that even if you don't care at all about Australian literature, you will get something out of this part of the conversation, I hope. There's been a lot of moving and shaking and not a great deal of honesty, it seems. So I'm going to download about that. Then we're going to look at this essay by T.S. Eliot, short essay called The Idea of a Literary Review. And I think that's going to lead us into some interesting chats about what it is to be making something in the middle of a literary community that is shifting and changing and has different priorities and different centers of gravity. That's my hope for the conversation. The journal that I'm going to be gossiping about is called Meanjin. If you're Australian, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not, you probably have never heard of Meanjin, but that's okay. Like I said, I think you'll still be able to get something out of this conversation. And I am assuming that we're going to get into some more inside baseball and gossip on The Secret Show. I've got some bones to pick, honestly. We'll see how that goes. And yeah, I'll tell you more about that at the end. But I'm guessing in a couple of seconds, Matthew will arrive.
Hey.
Hey, Dals, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Girls got things settled, no alarms going off, everybody's sleeping, the dog is happy,
Love that.
comparatively peaceful in the
Love all
house.
that.
Yeah, you?
That is great. Yeah, good. Tom is working from home today, so he might come in and make lunch at some
Yeah,
point, but hopefully that won't be
sure.
too noisy.
No.
Yeah, I'm delighted to get to speak to you twice in a week. Always makes me so
Yeah,
happy.
likewise.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, very glad to. Yeah, I was trying to think through, like, I don't know what order to talk about any of this stuff in, because there's
I have a vague
You have a scheme?
plan.
You have an idea? Okay.
I've got some plans and schemes.
All right. I'll
Um,
follow your plan.
yeah, I'm going to hit you with the Meanjin gossip to start with, and
Yeah,
then
please.
I will move over to the Eliot essay, and then I think that'll just take us out into general gossip, hopefully.
I think, yeah, that sounds good. And I don't know how much American listeners will know about Meange. I think they probably will know that it exists from your podcast,
Oh, you
but
think so? I barely mentioned it,
yeah.
so they'll be
Oh, I
doing
mean,
pretty well.
I definitely knew that it was a big deal, and
Okay. Oh, maybe I mentioned it more than I realized. Okay, that's
yeah.
great. Well, if you don't know Mianjin, I've been trying to think about what would be an equivalent journal over there because it's not quite Australia's poetry magazine. I don't think we really have that, but it's definitely got a center of gravity around it. It's 85 years old. It's published pretty much anyone that you're aware of. If you're aware of any Australian writer, they've been published in Mianjin.
So is it general interest, or is it literary fiction and poetry, or is it,
It's literary,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It's a literary magazine. It's opinion pieces, essays, poetry, I think, yeah, reviews and sometimes fiction. And it's really, really hard to get into. Really, really hard
Yeah.
to get into. It's hardly ever open. You hardly ever know when it's going to be open. And then when it is, everybody fucking submits. And I have never managed to get a poem across the
Yeah.
line there. I've tried a few times, haven't had much luck. So I don't know, is there anything that like
And
would
I
be an
mean,
equivalent
maybe like
there?
Paris Review?
Yeah, actually, Paris Review. Paris Review.
Which for people who, as Patricia Lockwood pointed out, hey, Paris Review, how's Paris? is based in New York and has nothing to do with the city of Paris.
Took me so long to figure that out.
Yeah, no, me too.
Years. Oh, really? Okay, I feel less
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, well, let me dive in to
Yeah,
this story, which I'm just so excited to have like gossip that I can share with you that listeners might
yeah.
conceivably care about. So it's a literary magazine. It's 85 years old. It's published Forbes, Gwen Harwood, Helen Garner, everybody you would have heard of. It came out a couple of weeks ago that Meanjin was being shut down, and there was no warning. There was no publicly visible sign at all that the journal was in trouble. The decision was made by Melbourne University Press, and they said this was a decision made on purely financial grounds. And already,
Right.
when somebody says purely financial grounds, you're thinking, why did you have to phrase it that way?
Yeah, yeah. We
Why?
we were wondering less than we are now that you've said that.
So, since then, in the last month, this happened about a month ago, a bunch of stuff has come out. The editor of Meanjin, it turns out, was fighting with the publisher, with Melbourne University Press, who I'll call MUP, to the extent that she had hired a lawyer. MUP hired an external consultant to come in and review their operations, including Meanjin. According to that consultant, who has since spoken publicly, there was nothing in her findings that pointed to the need to close Meanjin.
What? Maybe do consultants work differently in Australia than they do in America? Because in America, you hire a consultant in order to fire people.
Well, maybe that's what they were doing because they were already fighting with the editor, but that's
All
not
right,
exactly
okay.
how it worked out.
Rogue consultant. All
Road
right.
consultant, she's come out and said, "Oh my God, I did not advise them to close Meanjin. Her findings have not been made public." MUP made Meanjin's employees, including the editor, I think there were only two, maybe the editor and one other person, made those people sign an NDA, which in Australia is fucking mental. Like, that's not the kind of thing that happens over here.
Do we know when they were made to sign it? Was this like from the get-go, or was this like a parting
That's a good question.
arrangement?
The impression I get from the way this story has been told is that that was definitely not a condition of employment, like something that
Okay.
happened recently.
This is like some kind of settlement closing out deal.
Yeah, but it's
Okay.
not like we don't do NDAs.
That's not what you don't do that there.
I
Okay.
don't think
Yeah,
so. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong about any and all of this, and I'm sure our Australian listeners will correct me where I've gone off the rails here. But NDAs were signed, employees were made to sign
yeah.
NDAs, and then MUP told Melbourne University, its governing body, we're going to close Meanjin. So Melbourne University Press didn't ask for any feedback from Meanjin's readers. It said it was a purely financial
Huh.
decision. But it didn't so much as was pointed out at the protest that I went to, it didn't so much as say, oh, maybe we could print the journal on cheaper paper. Maybe we could make it smaller, which is something that
Maybe put it
Meanjin's,
online. Put it. I mean,
and it is
yeah.
online as well. So why not
Right.
just make it fully online?
Right.
There are many, many things they could have done.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So they summarily closed it. They said it's purely financial. That's all they said. And then since then, they have said to people who have approached them saying, well, do you want some money? Melbourne University Press said the magazine is not for sale. So no one even has the option to pick this thing up and back it financially.
This is like buying the rights to a screenplay so that nobody
Yeah.
can make it.
Yeah, so nobody can make it. Yeah. So here are my initial questions. Why have the employees been made to sign this NDA? Why
What?
not release the consultant's report? If it shows that the journal isn't financially viable, why can't we see that work?
Right.
Why not seek more funding from readers? Like the online subscription was $5 a month. It's basically nothing. Like we could have paid more. Why not go online
Uh,
only? If there was a disagreement between MUP and the editor that was so toxic,
why not just fire the editor?
just get rid of
If that's
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like what went down between
You're
those
just trying to
people.
like
But yeah,
imagine like selfishly from the perspective, like for
yeah,
like if we're just putting on a mercenary hat and imagining being MUP.
yeah.
What are you after?
What are they after? And then they've since said they're going to open up the archive of Mianjin.
Okay,
What does that
right.
mean? Like, where will it live? Are they going to digitize all the print issues? Will all this writing now be freely available, or is it suddenly going to be paywalled, which I like can just so imagine happening?
Right.
Do they even have a plan? I doubt that they do. There's a tiny footnote that I want to make here. Maybe it's not a tiny footnote, but there's something else I should add before I allow you to respond to all this insanity. It may or may not be relevant that Mianjin has been publishing pieces about Israel's actions in Gaza recently. The
Okay.
university, Melbourne University, is fucking
Right.
uncomfortable as hell with anything to do with this shit. Like there were protests on campus that got
Yeah,
shut
yeah.
down. They are now like surveilling the hell out of students. All the academics have been made to sign this thing before they can log on to the Wi-Fi network. Like it's crazy
What are
over
they
there.
signing? Well, they're signing some like
Some
not.
like yeah, I think it's like we need to be able to look at your stuff and like
Oh, like just signing over the rights to look at anything they're doing. Oh my God.
I think so, something like that. I'd need to double check
What?
that, but like basically the uni is like we don't want any trouble. We don't want anyone to say anything that could be uncomfortable or difficult. We need to keep the student dollars rolling in, and to do that, we need to be as uncontroversial as possible. Is my
But this
read on
is
that.
but this is not the way to do that,
Also,
right? To
like me
shut down
engine,
like a beloved
yeah,
magazine that's been around for many, many decades and like that's not the
yeah.
way to avoid controversy.
And I just want to be totally clear with the listeners here. I never read Me Engine, really. Like, I was not deeply into this thing. Like, I did a Substack post about this. I'm a shitty literary citizen in general. I'm really bad at reading journals as a whole. And Me Engine was one where, like the way that I'm built, I try to avoid most news. And when I would open up the front page of Meanjin, it was like, here are 10 more things you have to worry about. And it just didn't work for
Right.
me. So I didn't really read it. So it's not, I don't want to give the impression that, like, oh, I'm fighting for this beloved thing that I was so involved in. It's not that. It's just like, this is a shitty way to go about things. And why have you done it? And what the hell? Like, it's a literary journal. How much damage could it possibly be doing? Like, for real.
Yeah, okay, so like yeah, just trying to use process of elimination. If it were just the editor, you fire the editor.
Yes.
If if it were just finances, then you cut costs by cutting print
Easy to
or
do.
you reduce pages, you do what lots of other magazines has done, which is you put out a slightly shittier product, you thin
Yes.
down the table of contents, you do fewer issues in a year, you rely on more volunteer staff, you invite more donation. I mean, like
So many
if
options.
it's truly just finance, then you do that. It, so there's something they want to, and if they just don't want to deal with it anymore, then you're happy for somebody to take it off your hands, especially if they're willing to pay you for it.
Absolutely. So it can
So you
only
don't to
be,
shut it down is like
yeah.
there's something specific about this magazine that you want to kill.
Yes.
What? What?
Right?
Was there a like was there like a really active comment section or something? Was there like an aspect of it? Because I don't know, like different like I know there's a whole like subculture to like the New York Times comment sections, and they're like,
Yeah.
did it work like as a as a periodical, but that was also in a way a forum? Like, was there some aspect of that to it?
Well, no. Like,
Okay,
no.
okay,
It
all
just,
right.
I mean, I don't know. I'm friends with a bunch of poets and writers here to a degree. When we get together, we don't sit around saying, "Oh my goodness, did you read that essay in Mianchin? Oh, it really made me think." Blah 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 blah. Like
Right.
it's not like that. I mean, again, we want it to exist.
Why?
Yeah,
I mean,
great
my
question.
instinct is the same. My instinct is like, I would rather have that exist than not. Like, if somebody said we're
Yeah,
getting rid of the Paris Review, I'd say, oh no. But like, when was the last time I read the Paris Review? It's been a while since I read a small item from the Paris Review, which is all I would ever read anyway.
yeah, yeah. I
So
think,
my instinct is with you, but why?
yeah. I mean, I want it to exist selfishly so that I can get a poem in there because I want to be part of its like I want to be part of that
Yeah.
lineage, and I want
Alice
it.
is almost famous in Australia. You
Come
people, you've got a
on,
letter into Mianjin.
fucking close. Um, yeah, I just I hate the feeling that this gives of it's not just that it devalues everything that has been published there to some degree. It feels like it devalues the rest of the Australian literary ecosystem because it's like, well, all this shit could just die, like
Yeah.
with no explanation. And of course, that's always been true. But in the past, like Overland is one of Mianjin's sort of like not competitor, but like a sibling journal. And they've gone through terrible funding challenges and done exactly what you've said, like it's smaller, it's not distributed as often as it was when I first started trying to get in there. But like it still exists, it's still there. Like they've fought for it. A lot of people have fought for it to continue to exist. And yeah, I don't want to be like on a high horse about this because again, I'm just not I don't have any kind of credentials when it comes to like actually engaging with this stuff. I'm really terrible, but I just want to know that it's there. There's a comfort in that, in knowing that your literary
Yeah.
ecosystem has longevity. I mean, you've just gone through this basically over at Literary Matters to a different
Oh, for
degree.
fuck's sake. Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, it's fucking heartbreaking. It's all the work that's gone into that journal,
Yeah.
most of it unpaid, that somebody just sort of brushes it aside and goes, nah, fucking poets, get rid of them. We don't need them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because it definitely gives me a bad feeling, and I had a conversation like this with Brian about like, it doesn't feel good, even if you are at the New York Times, it doesn't feel good for the Washington Post to take like a huge,
Yeah.
almost fatal hit. Like
Yeah.
that's like, that seems like bad for the whole culture.
Yeah. And Australian literary culture is small, relatively insular. There's not that many places to publish at the moment.
Right,
There's a
right,
dearth
yeah.
of little magazines. And in terms of like big places to really get your work seen, it's like Mianjin, Overland, Island, the Griffith Review, Cordite, I guess.
I know Cordite I've heard of,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Cordite's just getting a new editor, which is exciting. But and Overland is getting a new poetry editor, or has a new poetry editor now. So there's a bit of a changing of the guard happening, which is exciting to see. But like, yeah, there's not compared to when I started, like trying to get stuff out there, sort of circa 2009, 10. There are fewer opportunities across the board, whether you're looking at like a big name thing or just like a mid-tier thing or even a little thing. There's just like less publication opportunities than there used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this
And
is
I
this is
mean,
a big
yeah.
piece of the pie gone.
Well, no, I'm learning over the past several years that that having, because of all of the people who come and go from magazines, and really there's an unhealthy version, which is it's all backslapping, or a good old boys club where you publish my poem, I publish yours. Like that happens a lot. But
Mm.
there's also just in terms of like having people to help out, having a certain amount of active knowledge of how things work going on, that you end up connecting this editor to that editor and this web manager to that magazine, to like that
Yeah,
having all of these places running and communicating with one another helps keep them all healthy, helps keep
yeah,
them all active. It's sort of like, it's almost like when a mall is dying,
yes,
like when you start losing big anchor stores in a mall, the other stores are gonna suffer more because then they're like there's just less interaction. No, there are fewer people going to the food court. There's fewer people passing by that section of the mall.
Yeah, that's a good
You're not
analogy.
trading managers. You're not stealing, good clerks from one place to another. There's just few. There's just less motion.
Yeah, this is a bit like the Big W has closed. And so is there a reason
What's
to
the
go
big
to the
deal? Is that
mall?
like a big department store?
It's a
It's like
department store.
Macy's or something. Okay.
Like Macy's. Macy's is closed.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that was where I had my high school job at Big W as a checkout chick. But
Yeah.
yeah, anyway, so I don't know. I've always had my doubts about that phrase, a rising tide lifts all boats. But it does seem to be true that like a receding tide is bad for everyone.
receding tide, yeah, a rising tide may not lift all boats, but a receding tide definitely lowers all boats. Right? That
Right.
seems that
I
seems
need you to
pretty
fix
true.
that for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
Sorry, you threw me a little
anyway.
bit because I learned recently about the Rising Tide Foundation,
Oh, what's
which
that?
I don't totally know.
Oh, is it a bit fucked
It's a,
up?
no, I don't think it's fucked. I don't think it's fucked up. It definitely had like there's a feeling, and I've had like private exchanges with various people in the formal poetry world
Oh no.
who have like there's a reflex you get,
Oh
and I don't
no.
and like there's no reason I have to think it applies in this case. But there's a little reflex you get in the back of your head when you encounter certain styles, modes, flavors of presentation. And I should say, to my knowledge, it's not even primarily concerned with poetry. It's like a cultural fan. But like, there's a little tickle in the back of your mind that just is like, please don't be
Yeah.
white supremacist. Please don't be white supremacist. Please don't be white
Yeah.
supremacist. And I don't think it is. I think there's no reason to think it is. But it's just come onto my radar recently. I think it seems interested in education and culture and tradition in a way that seems wholesome, I think.
Oh man.
But yeah, it's just that was the where that phrase has come to mind recently, or that adage.
Okay, well, I definitely don't know about them, but actually you're reminding me of something that Elijah notified me about. There's a formal poetry competition in Australia, which I
Hmm.
had never heard about.
Oh,
And he emailed me and said, "Hey, check this out." And I sort of looked into it and I was like, there is something about this. I literally don't remember the
hmm.
name of the organization. So I'm not being cagey. I just literally can't remember. There was something about the way they were phrasing stuff that I was like, what is this? And then I found this like really nasty statement about essentially like Australia's Indigenous population. I was just like, oh, well,
Ah,
I
okay.
can't take
Well,
your money or have anything to do with you. Oh well.
yeah.
But yeah, it gets kind of like framed as this like, oh, we're preservation of language and blah blah blah. Like, yep, yep, cool. Why did
I
these
would,
things
yeah.
have to go together?
Yeah, it is like it's an exchange I had with Elijah recently. Like it is unfair probably, but like there's definitely a part of me that is like just much more at ease with the possibility that I might like go to a party or be published alongside somebody or be involved in some kind of conversation with somebody who had ties to like a pretty extreme left wing group, right? There's some left wing groups that are serious bad news or that have had serious bad news in their past. You're like, they're like professors at various universities in the United States who, in an earlier life, like bombed civilian, locations, and it's like acts of leftist subversion. But like, I don't get a queasy feeling at the idea of being like inadvertently associated with them. I don't seek it out, but it's like
No,
but there's definitely like a different kind of like allergic sense of like, oh, let's stay away from the white supremacists. Like it's like
yeah,
you don't want to be like you don't want to be a degree from a degree from a degree from a degree removed. You want to be like as far as possible from that. And it probably is, as Elijah said, just because we have a kind of a more left leaning artistic culture. That's probably it.
that might be part of it. Yeah, I think there might be a few things in play there, but yeah, we might get to that. So
Yeah, yeah, we shouldn't get totally derailed.
that's okay. I mean, that's really all the gossip, and I don't have a great deal else to sort of say about Mianjin except you know,
Raw speculation.
Vale, and yeah, raw speculation.
Is there any? Does it seem like there's any chance that they could could bounce back? That there could be
That's
a
that's the
reversal?
insane thing. I mean, we had this protest which was really great. It was really fun and it felt good to just stand out on Swanston Street with a bunch of people who were just like just signaling that we hated this, knowing at the same time that it would make absolutely no difference to the decision-making powers of the university and the press. Yeah, is there any chance? The thing is that when something like this happens, like even if you rescue it, it comes back like shrunken and weakened, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So like it's possible. I guess anything's possible. I didn't think it was possible that they could just close it overnight, but I just
I
don't
mean, it could be
know.
like, well, I was going to say the classic example used to be Lance Armstrong had cancer and it totally transformed his body, and then he rebuilt his body from the ground up, and he became a champion bike rider, which he did,
He did.
but it was also blood doping. But
There's
so
a
yeah,
few things
there's
going on
less of
there.
a good example anymore. But
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
well,
know if it's
good
Lance
good luck
Armstrong.
to everybody in the you know in that non-disclosure agreement maelstrom.
Fucking
Godspeed
hell.
wherever you're headed.
Yeah, I hope that they all have good people around them to kind of process how shitty this all was. Let's now turn to T.S. Eliot. I learned a lot looking at this essay and just looking at how it was published. So it's called The Idea of a
Yeah.
Literary Review, and it was published in Eliot's journal, which he initially called The Criterion. At this point, it's being called The New Criterion, and that's because they switched publishers. They switched
Okay.
to what became Faber and Faber.
Right.
The New Criterion, as it is now, has no relationship to this journal, to Eliot's journal.
Oh, this is just a totally separate
Completely
magazine.
separate, they just took the name.
So like it would be like initially if you just started a magazine called the New Me Engine, and then later somebody on a different continent was like, "We're gonna have the New Me Engine too."
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Exactly. Exactly that.
Which, by the way, free idea, some Australian listener. Go ahead and start. Alex Keown, start the New Me Engine.
Go, Alex. Yeah, so he calls it the New Criterion for a couple of years and then he changes it back to the Criterion. And for a little while, it's the monthly Criterion. But anyway, this is
Okay.
Eliot's magazine. He edited it for 17 years, edited it for 17 years, 22 to 39. And I also found out just a little bit of trivia that the first issue that he published was where he published The Wasteland. This is the kind of thing that
Oh,
like you used to do. You used to be like, I want to publish my long poem. Okay, let's
yeah.
let's start a let's start a magazine and
I had
publish my
always thought
poem in
it
it.
was published in poetry for the first time, but I guess that was just the first time in the States.
Yeah, I think it was this is a UK thing, I should have
Yeah,
said.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 So anyway, this essay goes in a bunch of different directions and I think only accidentally makes some really good points, but it's basically him investigating what are the things that literary reviews do and what makes them good and what makes them not so good.
Yeah. I found myself like the recurrent experience I had reading this essay was that I found myself strongly disagreeing with him in theory and then starting to come closer to agreeing with him in practice. So
Okay.
like he would make these statements and I would think, What is that?" And then I'd be well, I guess something like that ends up sort of being true, but not the way you've laid it out exactly. He has an idea of a review that feels to me very much like what counts as a review versus like a magazine or a miscellany feels very much to me like a college freshman arguing about the difference between movies and films.
Yeah, it seems like a very fine distinction that he's drawing.
Yeah.
Like,
He also has a Cameronic tendency to like say something extremely derisive and dismissive, and then immediately say like, "Oh, actually, that's fine," and I have total respect for that. You're like, well, wait a minute, what?
he does do that. Yeah. Well, he starts out by saying, it is not enough to present a list of distinguished contributors. So already the assholes of
Right.
every literary editor across the world are clenching.
Yeah.
It's not enough to express a cordial zeal for the diffusion of good literature. Okay, well, we basically ruled out everything. This is the third
Yeah.
sentence of the essay.
Yeah.
And then he says, many reviews and periodicals have proved deficient not so much by their failure to carry out their purposes, but as by their failure to conceive these purposes. That seems like a decent place to start. I think a lot of magazines, a lot of journals start out by saying, well, we're going to present a list of distinguished contributors and we're going to express a cordial zeal for the diffusion of good literature. I don't think he really expresses what he wants people to do instead. He basically says, like, just be like me.
Yeah, it's a lot of definition by negation that, but the negations all seem to leave nothing behind.
Right?
he,
What do
he
you
says
want me to do?
yeah, even his pairs of opposed errors feel like very hard to parse. He says like here are the ways that you fail. Is there two pairs of opposed errors into which a literary review may fall? It may err by being too comprehensive in its selection of contributors, or by being too narrow. That's one pair. Like you can be too. It's like, this is kind of like an Aristotelian kind of spectrum. You can be too many contributors, or too broad a selection of contributors, or too narrow a selection, or it may err by including too much material and representing too many interests, which are not strictly literary, or on the other hand, by sticking too closely to a narrow conception of literature. I understand that those are different ideas. It is very hard in practice for me to figure out what the actual difference is there
Yeah.
between too many because it's not, again, it's not about raw numbers. It's about too comprehensive or too broad a selection. He's not talking about the size of the magazine. He's talking about the breadth of the vision of the magazine for what it wants to include. And one of those considerations is what it considers to be literary, which again starts to feel like a film movie distinction.
Exactly. It really
What
is.
are we getting at here? What is the actual? It's like he provides he just he's like Socrates would lose his mind because like he when you want examples he provides abstract principles, and when you want abstract principles he provides only examples.
Yeah, yeah, which he devolves into at the end. But
Yeah.
he doesn't go quite so far as to use the word balance, but what he says when he gets a little bit directive is the ideal literary review will depend upon a nice adjustment between editor, collaborators, and occasional contributors. It's
Yeah.
like,
And he
okay,
has a little addendum to that that I do like, that it felt like, again, it was like not a good definition, but it was like starting to describe something that felt worthwhile, which was yeah, editor and collaborators may freely express their individual opinions and ideas so long as there is a residue of a common tendency in the light of which many occasional contributors, otherwise irrelevant or even antagonistic, may take their place and counteract any narrow sectarianism. So
yeah,
the idea that you should also incorporate some conflicting voices, some diverse perspectives in that should be a regular
mm,
consideration. Like you should incorporate that into what you do. That feels like, yeah, okay, so you've got sort of a stable and you've got a guiding spirit, and then you make a point of reaching out to invite in productive disagreement. That seems like
yeah.
sort of all good practical things, even if, again, so much of that is just like, well, you try it over a while and you kind of slowly get the hang of it.
Yeah, that could just be how that happens is you accidentally invite in voices that don't quite fit with what your idea was. I really like this distinction he makes between a program and a tendency.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
what he says is that a program, which I think maybe you could use the word, I don't know, maybe this is too much, but maybe you could say like mission. Like if a
Yeah, yeah,
journal
yeah.
has a
I think
mission.
mission statement is the
Yeah.
way you would usually put it. That this is what our mission is.
Yeah. Like I was looking at the actual New Criterion, the current one, and they have a statement on their website that says, on the front lines of the battle for culture. So they see themselves
Sure.
as at war.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a program. A program is a fragile thing. The more dogmatic, the more fragile. And when I read that sentence, I thought, yeah, me engine.
Right.
definitely, like, would it have been able to withstand, particularly in the last 10 or so years, an essay that the majority of its audience would have found offensive? Or would people have just left in droves? And I don't want to single out Mianjin
Right.
necessarily, just for, like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not
Or
just
even like
them.
if would there have been a distinction drawn between an essay most of its readers disagreed with
Mm,
and an essay that was offensive? Like
yeah,
would that even be a meaning, like a possible distinction that you could make, or would the existence of the disagreement define the offense?
exactly. And, like, are you allowed to even do that? So that's what Eliot describes as a program. And then he talks about a tendency. A tendency, he says, will endure unless editor and collaborators change not only their minds but their personalities. So editor and collaborators may freely express their individual opinions and ideas so long as there is a residue of common tendency. And I liked that as a model of a healthy community in general, not just an
Yeah.
artistic community. I think that
No,
is a nice idea.
no, I think so. And that's where I started to feel like, well, I don't know what I don't know what the abstract principle here is, but tendency seems like a good word for what ends up happening, which is like in a healthy magazine, you are always seeking out new voices and you're kind of trying to keep your ear to the ground and you're inviting in submissions as well as specific solicitations, and you have some regular contributors, and you have your own inevitable taste where, like, you know, my, I like my inclination would be to try to take a lot of different kinds of poems, but like, I'm going to publish fewer than average prose poems and fewer than average vomit poems, right? Like, there's not going to be a ton, and like cat poems, there may be some of those, but like, it's not going to be you end up discovering that there are tendencies even within a relatively Catholic taste, and that seems fine. That seems like that's part of what it means to have a magazine's. You don't want it to become pinched or provincial, but it's
Mm.
okay for there to be a somewhat identifiable flavor to the range of stuff that appears in a magazine's pages.
Otherwise, what's the point of having an editor?
Yeah. But that also seems to me to be very much more volatile than he gives it credit for. Like he seems to think that that can be a quality that attaches to a magazine in a sustained way over time. And I think you get whiffs and some continuity like sourdough bread, but I think like changes of masthead make all the difference in the world. Changes of submission policies, changes of the board, like there's a lot of ways to strongly change the tendency of a magazine.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that always strikes me about Eliot when I read him is his supreme confidence and lack of
Yeah.
interest in anyone who, would
Yeah.
like, he's just not even worried if you don't agree with him. And this is him writing in the middle of the Criterion's life. It's interesting to read. He's got a last essay that he publishes in 1939, just on the sort of the brink of the Second World War, and he's just sort of saying, "Look, I got to finish this up because it's just not feeling right to be doing this work anymore, and I don't really know where things are headed, and it feels really difficult." But at this point, he seems like as an editor, he's very much at the height of his powers. He's publishing all his mates,
Inmates, including himself.
including himself,
Yeah.
in the very first
Yeah.
issue. A little bit later on, he says, "Our Catholicity must be ordered and rational." And I read that sentence and I thought, okay, but like ordered based on what? Rational
Yeah.
according to who?
He's very dismissive of what he calls the miscellany, but it's hard. I don't know. I had a little bit of a hard time figuring out. Well, he says the review, which makes up its contents merely of what the editor considers good stuff, in safety quotes, will obviously have the character of a miscellany and no other character whatever, except the feeble reflection of the character of a feeble editor. He then goes on to say, like, oh, but actually, when magazines do that and they know what they're doing and they're doing it self-consciously, that's perfectly fine and respectable. And like, it's like,
So when
you
it's
can go
me,
back and change the previous sentence. This isn't published yet. You're in the process of writing it.
just don't be
Yeah,
feeble, like obviously.
yeah. It feels to me like, again, there's maybe some, because I don't know, like there are versions of that that feel true to me. Like both Don Scher and Adrian Mataika and the little interim editors at Poetry feel like their agenda felt a little bit like a kind of a feeble. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I didn't even feel necessarily like they were filtering for good stuff. They were just sort of filtering for notable stuff of one kind or another. So like that seems to me like that is like the miscellaneous quality of poetry in this era has been a feeble one, but yeah, it seems like the good stuff selected, like with most editors, my inclination is to say, no, just take stuff you think is good. Like, stop taking stuff that you're taking for any reason other than that you think it is good.
Mm.
Or at least, like, cut that down to the smallest sliver possible. You know, like that. And it feels like there are few cases in which I feel like, no, let's look at something other than what you consider to be genuine quality.
Yeah. But so, okay, let me put you on the hot seat for a second.
Yeah, yeah.
When you were, up until very recently, poetry editor at Literary Matters, how much were you able to do that, to just publish the stuff that you thought was good? Like, how much pressure were you under to like get this person in there?
We weren't under any direct pressure from, I mean, for the year, I was associate editor for a long time and then poetry editor for 1 year for two issues. Yeah, I mean, as poetry editor, I had free reign.
Mhm.
Translation was a little bit more of a conversation, but it's also a, yeah, I think like, so the question was what pressure was I under myself? Because, I don't think we did very much publishing famous people just because they're famous. Because that's like, I just don't think you get much out of that, right? Like if you just have a famous name in your table of contents, like the famous names that will appear in any old table of contents and publish some dog shit there, like people know those names. It's like they know that they're famous and they also know they're like, well, this isn't going to be any good.
Yeah.
Like if I've heard of this person and not of this magazine, then I guarantee this is going to be a bad poem. So I just don't think there's much to gain from that. Where the real compromises happening, probably they happen in places where it's either like you do have some sort of personal relationship, and so you do you inevitably feel pressure, and I think you do your best to be as exacting and as unsentimental as you can, and everybody has a degree to which you're able to do that, right? Like you have a degree of comfort or discomfort with being with like flat out rejecting somebody you have a close relationship with, or being critical or asking for revisions or what, like, I did as I was as exacting and uncompromising as I felt I could be, and probably other people would be more and some people would be more and other people would be less. There's other compromise maybe that happens when you have ongoing relationships with strong poets who do consistently contribute good material, and yet it's not the quality is not perfectly consistent.
Mm.
But we've rejected like a fair amount of work from very good poets who didn't submit their best work, or who this poem wasn't working very well. And sometimes they got really, really mad at us, and sometimes they submit it again. And often we publish something else they sent in. I did mention that there was a case of, I mentioned this in as a blind item, and I'll leave it as a blind item, but there was one poet in particular that another person not currently affiliated with the magazine said it would be a good idea for me to solicit from, specifically because he was a powerful editor whose inclusion would benefit not me, but the other people in the magazine by making him like keeping his eye on the magazine. So that would be beneficial because this was selecting from existing publications. I don't want to be too specific about it.
Okay. That
But
he
like,
would read the other stuff around his poem and be like, "Oh
well,
wow."
this would be the existence of the like people want to be published in magazines that this guy knows exist
Seems like a
because
long
he makes
bow.
his selections from. It's a long bow, yeah,
Yeah.
but like this whole thing is a long bow. So the argument was it would be worth at least soliciting something from him. So we did, and he sent us something, and it was perfectly well done, but it just wasn't special or interesting at all. And we talked about it and then rejected it. And then later he surprised. I mean, I expected him to like completely write us off after that because he's very famous. and then he later, without being prompted, sent us something else that was like really funny and weird, and so we published it. But yeah, I mean, there's some compromise, but like we did our best to try to do as much to make the sliver of compromise as skinny as possible.
I'm feeling particularly reckless today, so I'm gonna share this blind
Please.
item with you. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
keep it a blind item though.
Yeah,
Seriously.
yeah.
About 10 years ago, I used to work for a pretty small journal. It was definitely a program type of journal. It had a program,
Yeah.
it had a mission. And at one point, the editor was sent something by a writer who was kind of working at a level above where our journal was at, like a
Uh,
big name.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We published that piece. It destroyed the entire magazine. It it prompted a scandal which I will never be comfortable talking about on the
Right.
record that took down the entire thing. And I watched that happen from the inside and I was like, holy fuck, this was like a well-meant decision on the editor's behalf, like, but it ruined everything.
Was it the piece itself, or was it?
It was the piece. Yeah, it was the content of the piece.
Oh, this was the Mianjin pro. This was the like a fly in the ointment of the agenda of the place.
Yeah, and the problem being, and this is definitely getting too close to being identifiable, but the problem was that we didn't even recognize that there was a fly in there. We just,
Ah,
yeah,
okay.
and we put this thing out, and then all of a sudden we were like, oh
Sure.
fuck, and then things went from bad to worse to terrible to no one's
Right,
talking
right,
to each other
right.
anymore.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
This, I
so
mean,
it
like,
can really
yeah,
backfire. Do not just take stuff because of somebody's name. Like, yeah.
right. Although I mean, I guess then the question is, was the piece good? Apart from the fact that it set some people off. Oh, you don't think it was good. But
No,
what they were objecting to was not the lack of quality in it.
no, no.
They were objecting to the content argument.
Yes. And
Okay.
now I'm starting to sweat.
Well, no, no, no. I mean, so like, but that's the thing is like, I think
Yeah.
there are lots of examples of things like this happening. So in the New
Yeah.
York Times, there've been like a number of these cases
Oh,
where
really? Yeah.
famously, yeah, and I want to say it was in 2020 during, yeah, it was because it was during the wave of enormous George Floyd protests and riots, of which there were both. There was an opinion piece published in the New York Times by a sitting senator who said, I think that the president should call in the National Guard to control riots in some of these cities.
Mm.
And the response to that was that we published this from the response from the rest of the newsroom and the opinion pages specifically was that we have published this opinion piece from a sitting senator endangers the lives of the black employees of the New York Times.
Yeah.
And the editor of the opinion page was fired. And
Yeah.
then there have been since then been not as disruptive, but similar sort of responses to Emily Baslan's article on transgender treatment for children. Or, I mean, same thing happened with Netflix. There was a move among current employees in response to the streaming services inclusion of Dave Chappelle's specials, right? So like this happens a fair amount in different arenas. Like I
Yeah.
don't think it's a new story, and I think there are probably a lot of examples. We do it all the time here. I guess it may be slightly rare in Australia.
Well, it's just, this article that I'll link to in the show notes, which goes through all this drama at Mianjin, ends with a little a little sort of parting shot where the writer says, "The shallow pond is nearly dry."
Oh my god!
Like, all right,
Oh,
mate, fucking, all right. You
oh,
don't have to say
oh!
it like that.
And it just strikes home. You recognize it as true before you like. Oh,
I think that is overstating things, Nick. But
but it. Oh
no,
man.
no, I don't want to make it sound like I'm laughing at Australian literature. I'm proud to work here. I'm proud of my friends who publish amazing stuff, and everybody works for no money, and we make amazing things. But there is not much water. It's a
Yeah.
shallow fucking pond, and there's a lot of people in it. And yeah, when you drain out a big chunk of water, it does. You notice. We're all going to notice.
Yeah. 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 I I I keep returning my mind to something you said at the very beginning of this conversation, which was I I never said to myself or to my peers, "Oh, I can't wait to see what's in the new Mianjin." Like that was not a thought that you had. And I guess a question that seems to invite is, shouldn't one of the things a magazine does be make people want to ask that question?
Yeah, well, I do feel that way about heat. I should have mentioned heat
Okay.
when I was going through. It doesn't come to my mind immediately because it is basically never open. Lou and I only managed to get poems in there through a fortunate chain of events, but like when I get heat, I'm like, oh, what's this going to be? Because there is sometimes
Yeah,
like
yeah,
actually good stuff in there. Also, it's small, which I appreciate. Um,
yeah.
the other big sort of clearinghouse, to use Clem Christensen's word, is Cordite. But Cordite,
Okay.
which I used to try to force myself to read, and look, I don't know who's going to be the editor of Cordite next, but they'll
Try to
have to
force
forgive
myself
me.
to read
They have to forgive
is
me for putting
tough.
it in these terms. But like, it's an
Okay,
online
yeah,
journal, and they
yeah.
publish this is a rant that I'm going to go on that's going to piss everybody off. But like,
Please, please.
online magazines are not print magazines. So why would you publish 60 poems at a time plus reviews,
Yeah,
interviews, an editorial, a launch speech? Like it's too, and when that's happening like 4 or 5 times a year, I don't know how many times a year Cordite is coming out now because again, I just checked out. But I know that other better literary citizens than me do read Cordite and they are excited to see who's in Cordite. One of the cool things about Cordite is that it's poetry first and every issue is edited by a different poet. So, and they pick a theme. So basically, it's interesting to see like what is Jill Jones going to pick? What is Stuart Barnes going to pick? You kind of you read to kind of see that editor's tendency in that given issue, but it's too much. But then
yeah,
again, the reason that it is so much is because, like, I mean, Cordite's the place where I got my first poem published. It's the first place for a lot of poets. It's
yeah.
important in that way. And yeah, better people than me read all those poems, and good for them, and thank God for them, because there's fuckheads like me floating about. So yeah.
Yeah, so we've talked to varying degrees about like a tendency that a lot of I think of as the sort of like comfortable university poet. No offense to the many comfortable university poets who listen to the podcast, but like I do think that there's a certain tendency that I feel like I recognize, which is the like and what kind of poem shall I be producing today?
How
You know,
lovely.
like that I will be producing poems goes without saying. That I will be regularly publishing, you know, a healthy number of them goes without saying. Like perhaps this one will be on wallpaper. I think like
What a delight.
this is again, exercises are great. Do whatever you need to do, but like I think there's a version of this that occurs in magazine editing, which is sort of like
Yeah,
the
true.
problem with Cordite having 60 poems, and this was like when you know we weren't able quite to do this because you'll see how you it's run by shitheads, but the idea that Matt Seithoffel and I had was to run 20 poems in an issue twice a year.
Yeah, that's a great number.
That feels like a very that still feels like a lot.
It's a lot. Like,
That's
that's
a
a lot.
lot.
Yeah. Like, you have
But
to
that's a
sit there.
very reasonable number to
Yeah,
ask people to read.
I think so.
And to me, you can only like your selectivity equals the number of poems you have established enough of a reputation to be able to credibly ask people to read.
Yeah.
Like you need to be as selective as that amount, right? Like if you whether it's through a personal network, whether it's through a little zine culture, whether whatever it is, whether you're a big famous national magazine, like whatever your profile is, the number of poems you can credibly ask the average reader of your kind of work to read, you know, in a ballpark sitting, that's just the number. That's the level of selectivity you have to have.
Yeah.
You can't do what Spillway does and just publish like cram full poem after poem after poem after poem after poem, 200 pages an issue. You just think like, well, what is this? Who is this for? Like a guy who's like, Spillway was supposed to be an important magazine to get into. I finally got into it after some years, and it was like getting published in an almanac or like a catalog of like farm equipment. You know, it's like
It's the whole
who
Earth
reads
catalog of
this?
poetry.
Yeah,
Yeah. I do understand because, I'm thinking of our friends who do this work. And like, I do understand that, particularly at the start, you got to publish a bunch of people because you got to get the word out. Like, you can't be too selective at the
sure,
very
sure.
beginning.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I,
But
I,
but
I
you
get
but
that.
you should be aiming like again. It may be that there's a goal and you never quite reach it, but it doesn't feel to me as if the. I mean, this is the thing about like those compromises I was talking about earlier, where you feel like you can feel the certain. You know, there's no human editor that does not feel various types of social pressure, various types of vanity, various types of like relationship pressure. Whatever. That's always going to exist. Part of being an editor is consciously working to limit the influence of that. You're not going to eliminate the influence of that, but you should be at least working to limit it. And it feels like a lot of places are not working to limit that at all. They're also not even working to limit the quantity of just mediocre stuff that fills their pages. They're not, like you should be putting these pressures on yourself, even if you never achieve the ideal, which you won't. It feels like those pressures are not even being applied in so many cases.
No, I mean, I think it's the opposite. I think a lot of the time, well, at least my experience with this is like people are trying to publish to make friends to
Yeah.
sometimes, like, or to look a certain way, to appear a certain way, to create a certain
Yeah. If it's
vision of the
genuine
magazine.
friends, I feel so much more warmly. Like it still means
Well,
bad
no,
poetry. But
yeah,
if
yeah,
you're
yeah.
actually if you're actually publishing and actually making real friends, it's hard for me to disparage that, even if I would never want to read it. But my fear is that in many cases it's not even actually that. you know?
No, yeah, friends is not the right word. Connections.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, like to get
All of the
up.
warmth just drained from my instinctive response.
I just listened back to that. I do feel a little bit different talking about Australian literary culture on this show than I did when I was making Poetry Says. I have a feeling sometimes when I talk about what's going on here, or I talk about Australian writers and poets, Over here, I have a feeling that I'm going outside the family and maybe exposing us to a level of scrutiny and possibly criticism that no one has asked for. So, look, I think it goes without saying that I'm sharing all this stuff about what's happened at Mianjin and the various other angles on it, just in the hope that it might help another editor to hear this. Although I was just thinking, I feel a lot like J.K. Simmons at the end of Burn after reading. What have we learned? What lesson can we draw from this? I don't know if we can draw much at all, but yeah, I don't share all this so that anyone can point and laugh. I'm allowed to laugh because I live here, and this is the world that I operate within and will continue to operate within for the foreseeable future. And yeah, I did want to note too that I came down pretty hard on Cordite there. I think really my feeling on that is that, like, when I do hang out with other poets here, and it's clear to me that they are doing the reading, they are reading Mianjin, they are reading Cordite, they are reading Overland and everything else, you know, they'll say to each other like, hey, great review in blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, God, I wish I was that person. Like, I really, it would be so much better for me and just better if I was that person. And I just am not. I'm not that guy. So what did I say we were going to talk about in the secret show? I predicted that we were going to talk about inside baseball and gossip, which we did. We talked a lot about SLEERICKETS' role and SLEERICKETS' relationship to its audience, which I was very glad to have that conversation. I think some of the things that I say will not be universally popular, but it felt very important for me to say those things. I also had a bone to pick about feminism, which I did. And then we talked about demons for a while. We got into it about Satan, demons, demonic forces. I mentioned a documentary that I watched a couple of years ago called Hail Satan, which I've linked to in the show notes. I guess this will count as Alice's Movie Corner. It was like, it's a documentary about a bunch of Satanists who are trying to get a statue of Baphomet erected in front of a local government building in response to the fact that a statue or a plaque with the 10 Commandments has gone up. So they want their Baphomet. But really, my memory of this documentary is that really they were atheists who just wanted to stir some shit. Anyway, Matthew and I don't fully align on how one should approach Satanists. Needless to say, it was a bit strange for Tom when I got off the call and we went out for a drink and he was like, so how was that? And I was like, yeah, we talked a lot about demons. And he's like, I thought you were talking about Mianjin. And I couldn't really explain it, but I did get the down low on Peter Thiel and his closed lecture series about the Antichrist. And Tom and I did discuss how many of our American friends we could reasonably house on the Tasmanian farm that his mum owns. And we think it's somewhere between 25 and 50 people. So keep that in mind. And then we actually had a really lovely, useful conversation where we talked about, like, what do I want to do with my poetry now? Because I've just hit a couple of milestones and it feels like a bit of a moment where I should probably reassess. But I am really skeptical about or hesitant to set specific goals because it seems like, at least in my experience, it's a very quick way to feel miserable and insane. At the same time, it's good to have goals. It's good to have things you're working towards. And so we talked about that, and we talked about publishing in America and where do I focus my energy and that kind of thing. And it was just really nice because, you know, I'm certainly not the primary breadwinner in my particular partnership, and so sometimes it feels like my career, such as it is maybe less important, but it was actually really helpful to talk to a non-poet about where I should be, or where I could be aiming. So anyway, demons. Yeah, look forward to that. On The Secret Show, which you can get to by going to SLEERICKETS.substack.com. You can plug in your email address. You can get a week's access for free. It is very cheap after that. You can talk to Matthew if you don't feel that you can pay. If you feel that you can pay and more, then you can become a motherfucker of the arts and support other people to access the show and all the other work that we do. We very much appreciate it. We appreciate all of you listening. You can reach Matthew at sleerickets@gmail.com. Because of some of the stuff that I come out with on The Secret Show, I think I should mention too that you can reach me at poetrysays.pod@gmail.com still. Yeah, I'm a lover, not a fighter. I don't want to fight with you. But, I guess if we need to hash something out, then you can totally email me there. I'm around. Yeah, thank you for listening. And with any luck, we will all be speaking to you again very soon. Until then.